Anyone who follows the paranormal and cryptid reports will no doubt have heard of some very strange entities. Entities that almost defy description and stand out as just plain weird. In this video, I will be covering 2 such reports. I hope you enjoy. Quidavac Litchard, a regular contributor on the Travel Channel show The Alaskan Triangle, interviewed a guest on his podcast Xeno Hunter. The guest asked that his real name not be used, so he was introduced as John Doe. He claims to have had a very strange experience in Hawaii, where he lives and works. According to John, in 2010, he could not recall the exact month. He was staying in Kalua'ahua in Hawaii with some friends not far from the beach. He had spent much of the day surfing and enjoying the sun. He returned home with the intention of heading back out after dark. He hoped to do some surfing under the moonlight. After nightfall, John headed back out, dressed in his wetsuit and carrying his surfboard. He decided to wait on the beach for the waves to pick up, as it was quite calm when he arrived. It was now around midnight. He observed a huge log on the beach and decided to take a seat on it. John recalled thinking there was seaweed next to the log, though when he sat down, the log shifted, and he realized that it wasn't a log at all, but something else. He turned around and looked down, and that is when he saw 3 faces looking back up at him. He was horrified. The huge log he thought he saw was actually 3 creatures. In describing them, he claims that these creatures were humanoid, but they appear to be covered in a type of seaweed. Not fur, not hair, but seaweed. They were dark green in color, and the seaweed appeared dry, crusty, and stringy. Given the density of the seaweed, he could not see their arms, but they had tails. Their faces were, quote, ghoulish and ugly. There were eyes and a nose, but their faces were, quote, distorted. He had trouble describing what he was seeing, as they appeared to be trying to blend into their environment, though it wasn't their normal shape. He likened it to how an octopus tries to blend into its environment when threatened. Host Litchard wondered if they might be a type of mermaid given their proximity to the beach, though John wasn't sure, as they did not look like any he had seen depicted before. They didn't look like any of the pictures that I've seen on, like social media, where they take videos or movies, like that. It wasn't like that. It was almost as if they were taking the shape in this physical world, and they were trying to hide themselves to make themselves look like, blend into the, be a log or seaweed. John claims that he looked around the beach and suddenly realized that there were more of them, lots more. They were all over the beach, and he began to panic. He got the sense that he had stumbled upon some kind of bizarre ceremony involving these strange creatures, whatever they were. He likened it to walking into a wedding uninvited. I saw them, they saw me. They knew that I saw them. They kind of looked up, and it was almost like a warning, because there was a ceremony going on. There were more of them, and it was happening, and I got the feeling at that point in time that I wasn't supposed to be there, and I was witnessing something that I shouldn't have been. I shouldn't have been there. John quickly left the beach and headed back to the house he was living at with his buddies. He was desperate to have somebody come back with him to verify what he was seeing. He even stopped a couple of strangers walking along the road who declined to go back with him. When he returned to the house, he managed to convince one of his friends to go back with him to the beach. The friend agreed and told him he would meet him there after he finished what he was doing. Happy that he found somebody who might be able to corroborate his story, John ran back to the beach, just in time to see the creatures heading back out into the ocean. He could only see their backs and their tails at this point. He then began to hear a high-pitched singing. I heard them singing to me, which was weird. They were trying to lure me into the water, and I remember walking out onto the beach because I was almost in a trance walking to them, and there were numerous. I don't know exactly what had happened. What I experienced was there's like these little black balls that started attacking my legs. So, thank goodness, I was only, maybe up to my ankles, maybe shins in the water. And so I was so close to the shore that I was able to turn around and kind of run away, snap out of it, because what it felt like they were attacking me. That's just all I can say, you know. As he walked down the beach, his friend who arrived became concerned, as John's legs were quite red. Back at the house, he and his other roommates checked his legs. They thought that he might have been stung by jellyfishes and was hallucinating. They quickly drove him to the hospital where he was examined by a doctor. John did not know what the black things were that were attacking him, but he knew that they were not jellyfish. Curiously, at the hospital, the doctor asked him numerous times if he had been stung by a jellyfish. They held him for observation overnight. The doctor attributed his injuries to the sea, but noted that it wasn't a jellyfish that caused his wounds. What it was, they did not tell him, possibly because they didn't know themselves. Looking back, John believes that they were a type of mermaid or sea creature. He didn't know exactly what they were, and he never saw them again. In the May-June 1998 edition of Ovni magazine, researcher Omar Fowler wrote of a forestry worker's encounter with a truly bizarre creature, one that, as far as I know, has never been written about before or since. Kevin, Fowler opted not to disclose his last name, claims that in 1977, he was with two friends in Willington near Bretby in southern Derbyshire, working on fixing a motorcycle, when suddenly a large light appeared over some woods situated about 2 miles to the south of them. The three witnesses stood and watched for several minutes as the light hovered there in the sky. Then 3 white lights detached from the main light and dropped down into the forest. The remaining light shot off almost vertically and left a streak of light behind it. It disappeared very quickly indeed, and was lost in the clouds. We couldn't do anything about it, so we just looked at each other and then carried on working on the motorbike, Kevin told Fowler. The men determined that the area where the lights were observed coming down was Repton Woods near Bretby Village. Curiously, Fowler noted that area had been the scene of several unexplained phenomenon reports and strange lights in recent years. I actually used to work in there, Kevin told Fowler. I used to work for the Forestry Commission, and I used to be there from 6:30 in the morning. It's an eerie place. There's hardly any animals in there. You rarely see one when you're walking about. It's not a very hospitable place. About a year later, in the summer of 1978, Kevin was working in the Repton area with a student who was on loan to the Forestry Commission. His name was Stephen. It was just after midday, daylight summertime. The sun was quite high in the sky, and it was rather warm. We were cutting inspection tracks through the trees so that the forester could walk down through them without getting his uniform scratched or whatever. And we got about 10 to 15 yards into the trees, off a main pebble rock drive. Then there in front of me, it stood looking at me. It was sideways on, but its head was turned left to look at me. Kevin claims that in that instant he observed a bizarre creature, unlike any he had ever seen before. A creature that honestly shouldn't even exist, yet there it was. It was about 4 feet high, and the best I can describe it is a fox on 2 legs. It was brown in color, had short little hands like dark little hands, and its back, it was like solid. It wasn't fur, sloping down to the ground, almost like a locust folded in wings. It didn't make any noise, and it had dark eyes, and it was walking through the trees towards where my friend was, and I shouted, "Stephen, there is something coming your way." And I could see it moving through the trees, but it wasn't pushing the branches out of the way. Kevin found it quite bizarre as the foliage was dense and thick, hence their reason for being there, to cut a path through the trees, yet this creature moved through them with virtually no trouble at all. It was very odd, he told Fowler. I ran back up my inspection path towards Ian, another forestry worker. I pointed to our right-hand side. It hadn't caught up with us, as I had run across. Then we both saw it as it came on an angle towards us. Then it veered away slightly and started walking down into the ground, as if it was going down steps. It was very odd. There was nothing there to our eyes. There was no tunnel entrance into the ground. It was just getting smaller. There was just the head, and then that disappeared. I mean, it was unbelievable. It made the hairs on the back of my head stand up. It sometimes does when I tell it, the story, again. But it was a few years ago now. I can draw a sketch. I have done many a time for people, who laughed, of course, but it's not the kind of thing you want to mention to people anyway.